Hey, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Boy, do I have a treat for you today. Direct from the North Pole, bringing in the bottom end and the good vibes. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a living legend with me, somebody I've admired my entire life. Cannot tell you what an influence he is on me and on you. Even though you may not know it, this man has made you move more than once. So welcome, my main man, Lee Sklar, to the Noel Casler podcast. Lee, how you doing today, sir?
Oh, ho, ho, ho. It is a pleasure to be here, Noel. I've been following you. I know you've been a really good boy, so you're going to get everything you deserve.
Thank you, Santa. I appreciate it, man. That hat works.
Yeah, this is really hot. I'm going to pop it
Please.
on.
I appreciate the effort. It looks awesome, man. So, right off the bat, everybody, if you're looking for a Christmas present, Lee's got a new book out called Everybody Loves Me. You can get it at leesklarsbeard.com.
It's lelandsklarsbeard.com, all one word.
Perfect. And signed copies available too, which is a great Christmas present. And if you guys don't know about this book already, it's incredible. Lee sort of has a trademark greeting that his friends and fans around the world have always, enjoyed taking sort of selfies and pictures with, and he shares that. And it's amazing. It's a who's who of popular culture and entertainment and regular folks. And it's more than just like a picture book, because you're getting a sense of like the personality and who all these people are. And it's such a broad swath of people. I got my own pic with you once. I was doing Cyndi Lauper's Home for the Holidays, and you were rehearsing at SIR in New York next door. Yeah,
No way there.
exactly. Wow, man, I'm impressed.
Dean came by, and there was a whole bunch of people. We were getting ready to do. We were doing John Lennon's like 70th birthday at the Garden. We were rehearsing. We were next door to you guys.
That's right. Absolutely. Which is a great event. I've done that with Jackson. That's just a great tradition in New York that they sort of do that. And that was the big one. That's awesome. Well, right off the top, you've been such a gift to people, I think, during this pandemic. I know you started it before, but the YouTube diaries and summations of your career, and every week how you pick an artist, it's something not to be missed. And when we were all isolated, I think it was, and we still are, all those of us that are paying attention, right? And we'll get into that because you were just saying the other day, it's surging again and people are acting like it's over. But watching those, I mean, it really is a masterclass on the music business. If you're a musician and you're interested in the craft of popular music, the best advice I ever got was like expanding my horizons. I went into live TV because I worked on like the Kennedy Center Honors and all these shows where there'd be artists in other genres that I might not consider, right? I'd be doing a gig and I'm like, oh, here's Billy Preston or Aretha Franklin or Little Richard. When you're exposed to different elements, it sort of rounds you out as a person. And I think that that's an element that comes through in those things. I was listening to the Bette Midler episode last night, and I love Bette, as we all do. She lives in my neighborhood in the city. And as you know, she's just a force of nature. But to hear you recollect those instances, and those sessions, it's just a gift. I just want to thank you for that,
Thank you. I mean, it started as an accident at the beginning of all of this. And thus far, I think today will be my 804th video. I haven't missed a day since March 23rd, I think, of last year. And it is one of these things that I've never thought about my career. To me, everything is about today and tomorrow, not what I've done in the past. And this has kind of required me to go back and do some forensics, rediscovering what I've worked on over the years. And a lot of it is about the relationships that develop. There's a common bond amongst the players in LA where I'm looking back at albums from 45, 50 years ago. And it's still a lot of the same guys I'm working with today, beyond the immediate family. It's a really fun journey for me. And the letters and the notes that I get from people has really been moving in terms of what it's meant to them, to have this to look forward to. I get people sending me like from Finland. They're eating dinner, watching my videos on TV and stuff. I mean, it's a trip.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's funny because that's how I watch them. I watch them at my kitchen table. It's like my quiet time. And, it's so great that you share that with folks because you were part of, like, for lack of a better term, almost the greatest generation of studio musicians. You guys came in right after the Wrecking Crew, this legendary, and you worked with those guys as obviously as a young kid, you're in the room with these people that you worshiped. And like me, I'm 50. So I grew up reading liner notes, in the mid 70s, early 70s. It was you, Russ, all, Craig Dorgy, the list goes on, but I always wondered what it was like in those rooms, and when you'll break down recording Dr. My Eyes or something and sharing an anecdote about Jesse Ed Davis and all these legendary figures, you're giving listeners and viewers a chance to be there too.
Well, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed. And the thing I've really, as things are slightly opening up, I mean, the reality of it is we're far from being over this dark age that we've found ourselves in. But one of the things I really enjoy doing is when I am in a real studio is doing a studio tour and taking people in the door so they can actually see what these studios look like and get a feel for a place where the music that they've enjoyed listening to was actually created. And it's really, I mean, the responses that I've gotten are really remarkable and heartfelt, and it's really fun. Like people will tell me, they'll say, "Oh, my 3-year-old daughter, every time I'm watching you, she goes, oh, it's Santa, it's Santa," and it's become this whole scene. But I love doing it, and I have no intention of stopping it. It becomes more difficult as work starts to come in again. It's still high on my priority list. So at this point, I fully intend to keep doing this until I'm worm food. I'm just gonna keep at it.
Good, because I mean, it's taken on. It's like musical church or something. There's this thing I do called morning pages, where you get up and just put down 3 pages of unfiltered thoughts and stuff. And your stuff is obviously curated, but I imagine it almost has a cleansing spiritual kind of benefit for you. Just the discipline of showing up to write every day. I've been doing a bit of writing myself, and Jimmy Buffett, obviously, who you've worked with, told me, just write a page a day, man. Just do a page a day, no matter what. And then at the end of 30 days, you have something, at the end of a year, you really have something. And
it's a great approach.
Yeah, it was actually the best advice I ever got on writing, because I was always thinking like, oh, I got to sit down and write the whole novel. And he's like, no, man, Herman Wouk told me just a page a day, and it works.
Really, that makes a tremendous amount of sense. I think one of the coolest things I ever saw was we do these gigs up till COVID, but we would do a gig every year at the Library of Congress. There's a beautiful theater in the Library of Congress, and it's called We Write the Songs. And what it is it's ASCAP, the music publishing company, ASCAP. It's their way of like talking to senators, giving them a concert and talking about the writing process, and please protect writers.
Yeah.
Get screwed. And so on any given show, there'll be like 6 to 8 artists on it, and I'm part of the house band. But so in doing that, we've also gotten access to some of the archives on personal tours of the Library of Congress. And one of the things I saw that was so great, and it kind of falls into what you were just saying, was there was a glass case, and there were 5 pieces of legal paper in there that Oscar Hammerstein wrote. And the first one just was all kind of the sketching, and all it said on top was things I like. And he was listing all these things. Second page, they're all dated. Second page was still saying things I like, but a little more organized. And the third day, it was called My Favorite Things. Right. And there were arrows going back and forth to all these things. On the 4th day, it was far more cohesive. And on the 5th day of that week, there was the song My Favorite Things in full bloom. So I mean, it wasn't like he sat down one day to write a whole song. He sort of was building an outline that he then, it's like you started with Cliff Notes, and by the end of it, you had your full essay. And it was interesting like that, though, just to say, get up, write a page. Yeah. Done. and maybe you're inspired and you write two, but get something down.
Exactly. Yeah. And the discipline takes on its own kind of inertia. I started at 1 and 3 became the average, because once you build those muscles, and I love what you just said, because it's so important for people to think or to see a window into the creative process and how like pedestrian it sort of is, right? Nobody starts with this polished, epic, classic song that Coltrane's going to interpret and countless others and, will be part of the canon of it. Started just like you, like a human being, showing up for what he was experiencing. And you said at the top of the show, it's like, you don't look back. Artists, good ones don't, they're present. One of my favorite quotes from you is how when you show up on a gig or a date, you're there to look like you and to give a shit. That's your attitude. Let's listen to the playback. Let's not pick up our phone and check Twitter as soon as the take is over. Let's engage in what's around us. And if there's anything in my life that I regret these days, it's when I don't do that. When I go through an experience, it was like I was in my head looking at my phone. Why wasn't I there with these people that the universe has sort of put in my path, right? Because I'm sure I can't speak for you, but I'm sure a lot of the magic that you've been a part of creating came from intense sort of collaboration in this one space, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the hardest part of going into like a lockdown. Like I've been recording from home, people send me part, but it's that juice that's flowing when you have a room with a bunch of creative people in it. When I'm sitting at home, all I can do is affect my bass part.
Right.
But when I'm in the studio, I can affect the entire thing. And like, we'll be in the studio with some artist and we go, God, what a great song, but it could use an intro. And the band makes the intro or could use a better bridge. And there's this camaraderie that takes place when you have those creative juices flowing. That's almost impossible to duplicate when it's just you by yourself adding your part. You can do the best you can there, but you can't really affect anything else because they're not there to respond to it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what so well said. If there's not that moment to moment, and that there's also, I find, I mean, I'm a performer, I do comedy and I had a theater background, and it's the same sort of thing. Like the high you get as a performer is from the other people. It's sort of like somebody else upping your game and knowing you never would have gotten that part if the other guy didn't do that, or have that one moment before, and in comedy, it's happy accidents are the best thing to me because it puts everybody in the moment. I was at the Wall Street Theater on Thursday night. You guys, I saw your show and I was there a couple nights later and the power went out, Lee. A freak storm because of climate change came through and knocked out the PA, the lights, everything, and the fire department had to come in, but it was safe. And everybody sort of gasped and I was like, no, we got this. I went to theater school. I can fill this theater with my voice. Stay with me. Let me finish this story and these jokes. And the people loved it. And they were like, thank you for handling it well. And my point was like, that was a gift, because I knew everybody was focused in that moment.
I'll tell you one of the great moments, almost exactly like that, in New York when in the 90s, when the huge blackout took place. Well, when that blackout hit, I was sitting in a theater watching Dick Shawn's one-man show, and all the lights go off in the theater, the emergency lights come on. Well, Dick was so spontaneous in everything he did because I had seen his show before, and it was a defined show, but with a lot of parameters for things. And for quite a while, everybody thought it was part of the show. And where he's going, oh, be careful when you go out tonight. It's really dark out there and stuff. And he finished the show and we opened the door and we walk out and Manhattan was pitch black. I mean, there was not a light to be seen except for car headlights and flashlights and candles. But it was interesting, if you're really a pro like that, you go, okay, let's just incorporate this into the show. It'll make it work. Put everybody at ease.
Yeah.
Don't freak out over this stuff. It's not like a tornado went through and devastated the place. It's just, it's dark, but just shut up out there and you can hear me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened. It was like, I got this. We're safe. I got the green light. We're going to carry on, and that's the beauty. I think the magic that I talk about this in my show. I was actually talking about a story telling about Stevie Wonder and working with him on Barack Obama's first inauguration. And we did a big concert on HBO on the mall beforehand. And, you know, there's 2 million people on the mall just sending love up to the steps of the Lincoln Center, you know, and the vibe that was there was just palpable. You know, it was that spiritual thing. And I've chased that my whole career because I felt it. I think you might have been on this gig. Jackson Browne did there was a Sunday festival that Jimmy Carter put together on the National Mall in 1978. So it was right after Jackson was kind of the headliner, obviously right after you did the Running on Empty tour, but everybody was sort of there in spirit and harmony for this greater good, this sort of feeling of hope that we can get when we collectively come together. And my show now is about that because we've obviously been divided, right? And we've lost a lot of that. And I think when people come together, it's like church. Do you know what I mean?
It can be a small number. I mean, it could be 20 people in a room. But if you have that focus together, it's very powerful. And I embrace anytime I get to be in a situation where you do have that kind of, it's not so much a kumbaya moment, but it kind of is where there's this entire feeling within a group within a positive direction, and it gives you hope, and you look at it and you go, it can be better,
right?
And we have to just fight this negative, you know, kind of creature that's evolved. It's always been here, but now it feels empowered.
Yeah, because it is empowered, you know.
Very much so.
Right. And it's, you know, it's folks like you that are bringing light to us, you know, that are bringing music and that are sharing, that are being honest about it. One of the things I admire about you most, besides, you know, the music and the artistry, is how you spoke out on Facebook. You know, you as you know, you were outspoken. You were calling it like it is, which I've always tried to do as well. Like this was not the time to hold your tongue and worry about offending maybe somebody in my fan base or anything like that. You know, you got to tell it like it is right now.
Far more important to speak the truth than to sit there and worry about your numbers. Right. I mean, I was, especially during the election, during that whole period, I was being, normally I get kicked off of blocked on Facebook about 130 to 150 days a year. And I kind of wear that as a badge of honor, but because I get death threats from people on Facebook and stuff. And, you know, I call them, you know, occasionally I call them out. Generally I ignore them because they're just a bunch of wusses that sit behind incredibly brave behind a screen, and they don't have the balls to come out of the house, you know, kind of situation. But I think that you can't complain about anything if you haven't taken a stand against it, you know, to sit there and talk about, well, everything here's all screwed up. Well, what have you done?
Right. Exactly. Well said. What are you willing to give up, you know, to make this a better place? I worked behind the scenes in live TV. That was like my main career. And I toured with Jackson and CSN and all these people. But I did the last CSN tour with Russ in 2015. We went around Europe and all that stuff. And we came home, and then it turned into 2016. Trump got the nomination. I had a cushy sort of gig in live TV to go back to that I was 20 years in. And I realized, like, if somebody didn't start speaking out about this guy, he was going to win. You know, and Hillary's campaign got in touch with me and said, do you want to tell what you know? Because I knew some secrets about him, you know, like he snorted his Adderall. And
I so appreciate everything you have done about this. You're like a light in the darkness when all this stuff was going on. And I applaud you for getting out and doing what you did.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that, you know, and when I did it at the time, it was, you know, I called up my colleagues and I said, we got to talk to the press, talk to the New York Times, tell them what we saw, because we all had these NDAs. And Mark Burnett said, who's a big reality show producer, said, I'll sue anybody who speaks out. You won't work again in this business. And I'd call up my colleagues and they'd say, look, Noel, I'd love to, but I got 2 kids in college. I can't afford to do it. Right. And I understood that, you know, they're like, I'm in the DGA. I get $700 a gig. Even if I speak out and people know it's all true, they won't hire me again just for the damage, you know, that it'll just because I'm difficult now. And first of all, I told him, well, there's nothing on the other side of this guy anyway, because if he becomes president, none of us are going to work because he'll do such a bad job. And that's what happened, unfortunately, right? The business shut down for a year and a half at the least anyway. But my point, and I'm not to toot my own horn, I was just like, I can't not speak out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, nothing is more important. I've already had a good career. I'll figure something else out. It was just like an imperative. I worked for Springsteen too, a bunch on like live TV and a tour. And he started speaking out pretty vocally around the first Iraq war. And his theory was like, look, if I've built up goodwill, it's time to cash it in. It's time to, we need all hands on deck for this battle, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I found myself like telling people, look at, don't change your mind because I've said something, but I'm imploring you to get educated, not to be sitting here quoting Sean Hannity and all the spew that's coming out every day. I always welcome diversity and conversation. And so if you have, I would like to be educated. So tell me what it is that appeals to you, what's working for you on this. I would never hear back from these people. All they would do is come on and go, Hillary and Obama and all, they throw out these keywords, and then you go to their page and it's got a cross and an eagle and an American flag on it every time. And these are the most anti-American hateful people. But, but I felt it was imperative because I'm sitting here looking at a country that I really adore, just being used as toilet paper by these people, taking the Constitution and wiping their ass with it. And it's heartbreaking that so many people have, they're in Jonestown, they're lining up for seconds of Kool-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, that's really what I wanted to talk to you about, because you've been on the front lines of sort of cultural movements, both progressive, and you started your career obviously in the late 60s and early 70s and early environmentalism. You've worked with so many artists who spoke out, No Nukes concert, just in these incredible sort of benchmarks. And I always wonder, of your generation, like, this is as bad as it's ever been, right? I mean, it feels like this must be worse than what Watergate felt like, or even the end of the Vietnam War protests, because it just feels like you just described. People are so weaponized. They get a screaming eagle and a punishing sticker on their pickup truck, and it's almost about being brutal to each other, This
is kind of the personification of evil that we're looking at right now. I mean, going through Nixon and Barry Goldwater and all these people back in the Vietnam period and all that, there was still kind of a dialogue that was, regardless if you were, it was the antithesis of what you thought talking to this person, but there was the ability to have some kind of a conversation. But with the people that have bought into this, the QAnon people who are now talking about magic dirt, and and all these things, it's like we went through a wormhole into an alternate universe, like Bizarro World and Superman, where everything yes is no. And I sit there in shock every day and listening to the anti-vaxxers. Like when we played the Immediate Family gig that we played at Adler Hall in New York City, there was an anti-vax, anti-mask demonstration outside going on when we were doing our sound. It had nothing to do with our show. It was just on the street there. And these people are out there with bullhorns, just spewing the most unbelievably ignorant, stupid shit. And you're just kind of going, if they were the ones that were going to die from it, then I'm all for Darwinism. If they all line up for this year's Darwin Awards, go for it. But the fact that they're a menace to the community as a large, as a whole, is what I find incredibly distressing. If they want to think that way and be affected by it and take down themselves and their families and all that, so be it. I don't want to see anybody die if it can be avoided, except a few people. But it's just, there's these people have just swallowed this ignorance pill that's just beyond comprehension. And I know they've always been there, but I look at Trump as the hood ornament on the clown car. These people are they've been there, they're packed in. And he's just allowed them to all come out and say what they think. But I sit there and I look at like women who support him have to be so full of self-loathing. A veteran who supports this guy has got to be suffering from shell shock or something, because everything he is against everything you would think they believe in. Yet they're looking at this guy like the second coming of Golem is really what it is.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like, I tell people in my stand-up act, if you even saw what this guy looks like in person before he has all the thing, like he's like riffraff when he gets out of the shower with the hair hanging down, like he's a maniac. If he came and sat next to your family at the food court, you'd get up and leave. Like I've seen the way dogs react to this guy. Okay. Like when they do sweeps, bomb sweeps in buildings, dogs would always freak out and then start barking when he walked by, which tells you a lot about who he is.
He's also never had a pet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That says a great deal.
Exactly.
About his humanity or lack thereof.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said. That's exactly. It's like kids and animals freak out in his presence because they sense there's something really malevolent there. And I happen to know he was a bad kid from the beginning, and his parents hid it because he was sort of the namesake of the family. The older brother had some issues, so dad knew he had to pass it on to this idiot son. And the whole life was about like keeping how messed up he was a secret. That's why they bought his medical, his school grades and his medical records and all, everything around him. When you get close to him is like, sign this NDA, don't tell anybody what you saw, because what you're going to see is going to blow your goddamn mind. And that's what's coming out of the White House now, right? All these tell-all books are like, you won't believe what he did. He wanted to nuke everybody, I
wish they were meaningful in the overall scheme. I mean, the problem I find is the people who believe in this guy, they would give them, if they said, kill your grandmother for him, they would do it. They're so deeply into this guy, the cult of him, that it's just horrifying that they are this lost a soul, that this has become the person that's the standard bearer for what they dream of America. And certainly I can understand when you get into white fear and all that, you got these people that are seeing the face of America, changing pretty drastically, and to me in an incredibly positive way, to make it a true melting pot of having, every culture here. But these people, especially these old white men who just foment fear in all this, and you kind of hope they die, but they have kids that have grown up with them, so there's more generations of these morons coming. It's scary, so scary.
That's so well said. Yeah,
they're dangerous. They're not benign. I mean, you look at at January 6th, and these people, like, in spite of the Republicans saying, oh, they were there to go to the gift shop,
right.
I mean, these were dangerous people that caused death and mayhem, and if they feel and if there is no serious punishment for these people, especially the instigators of it, not the knuckleheads who were, wearing their giant headpieces and running around, then what's to stop them? The only thing is, you take Mark Meadows and you put him in fucking prison.
Yes.
Done. Take Trump, put him in prison. I mean, we've got Gitmo sitting there being wasted on taxpayer dollars. It's there for terror. Can't think of better terrorists to put in there than our domestic terrorists. There's a few ISIS people running around. Man, these people, they expose themselves to every day on TV and spew things that are really, if it was coming from ISIS, people would be freaking out over it. Yet here they kind of look at them as they're Americans.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah. Amen, brother. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, time is not on your side. All this time that A.G. Garland is dragging his feet, Trump's fundraising all day long. He's been building this army for 3 years. These guys in the pickup trucks with his screaming eagles that are sending you death threats and all this stuff, that he's weaponized those people. Other fascists didn't have the internet. Hitler didn't have the internet. Right? They didn't have QAnon spreads because people can get on at 4 a.m. in their computer, and just get poison downloaded into their brains. And when it gets married with this sort of ethnocentric, white Christian, white racism with working class resentment, it becomes this just toxic, brio in these people that becomes their sense of identity. The scariest thing to me is that they think they're doing the right thing. That's when real evil happens, when people think they're fighting on behalf of their family and their country.
Yeah, no, we are in a pivotal, frightening time in this country. Unlike, I've never seen anything like it. And I'm turning 75. I've been around for a lot of this crap, and it's never had the same feeling that this past few years have created. And I know it's been here before Trump. Trump didn't create this, but he became like the perfect embodiment of it. But there's like even the production manager on Phil Collins's tour, we were talking one day and we got to talking about Trump, and he goes, look, at even a village of idiots needs a village idiot.
Right. Yeah.
And we had him right there, and they were rallying around him like he's the Pied Piper.
Right.
And he could give a rat's ass about any one of his constituents. Man, it's all about him and what he can benefit from it. I think he would throw his kids under the bus in a second if he could benefit from it. And for these people to look at almost deifying him, it's unbelievable that they're that lost.
Well said. And you're absolutely right. He would throw his own children under the bus in a heartbeat, and they would throw him under the bus too, given the chance. Ivanka and Jared, I was Ivanka's handler. Like, if you think Trump is bad, and he is, you should see what those kids are like. Don Jr., it's like the Dalai Lama would punch that guy in the face. Like, that's what I always tell them. They're like, what's he like? I'm like, the Dalai Lama would be like, I'm punching him in the face. And the Pope would be like, I'll hold him while you do. There's just a darkness there. And you're right. Every village needs an idiot. I think what Trump, his innovation was, he sort of like Henry Ford, invented the sort of factory line, the conveyor belt. Trump sort of branded this thing and made it cheap and accessible. He's like the Ray Kroc of fast food hate. You show up at a MAGA rally, you get a cheap shirt, you come out for the night, you scream with a bunch of other idiots, you feel good about your life, and you go home. It's like he's made it so easy to buy into this crap.
Yeah.
But, that's a dangerous thing. It's cigarettes, it's cancer. And I'll shut up here in a minute, but like you said, if another country did that to us, had spread anti-vax stuff, I haven't seen my grandma in 2 years. She's in Albany, she's 2 hours north of me, and she's in a assisted living old folks home. And I don't want to go in there and endanger her, even though I've been boosted and all this. It's not worth it. You know what I mean? Just the off chance that I could be bringing something into a facility with compromised folks, I'm not doing it. But think of all those people that are sitting around that, won't get to see a loved one again, won't get to say goodbye properly because of this idiot,
Yet they'll be laying there on the person will be laying on their deathbed, still not believing it's even real, or they're saying, "Can I get my shot now?"
Right.
And the ones I saw, I give them a shout out every single day, and I get people attacking me on my things, and saying, why don't you just play music and shut up, instead of spreading all these lies about the vaccines don't work and masks don't work. And I get all these doctors that write to me all the time going, these people have no clue. And if they were to spend like 1 hour in an ICU and really seeing what suffering is when you're in. But the thing that to me is so profoundly just sad about it is it's the healthcare workers who, when this started, were so diligent and so on the line, and then suddenly the ability to really curtail this comes along, and the people are saying no, a chunk of them. So they're still having to put themselves in harm's way every day now on behalf of people who are too stupid to do the right thing. And it's got to be really frustrating for them, because it's like you're banging your head against the wall at that point, because they didn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird, like I said, like, going through a wormhole into some alternate universe where you're kind of going, reason. The fact that I was a science major in college, I've loved science. And to see people sitting there denying science, but applauding Sean Hannity and Fox News, I'm going, where did the disconnect come from in this? That these people, yet chances are they had polio vaccines as kids.
Right.
They've had diphtheria. They've had, I mean, we've had vaccines forever. I can't, you know, and I'm a firm believer in the science of all of this. And to see these people out here just talking, spewing all this in absolute insanity, or they edit out a Fauci soundbite, you know, and then that becomes their mantra. And you go, that's not even what he said. That's not what he's even taken it totally out of context and stuff. But now all of a sudden you're rallying. You've made a poster about it. It's just.
No, I hear you, man. That's what my show is about. So I appreciate you sharing that. You know, that's what we talk about, because you can't not talk about it. And it's maddening. You know, the demonizing of Dr. Fauci, this genius researcher. I've spent time down at NIH. That place is like full of miracle workers. You know, they broke the genetic code, came up with AZT. You know, there's pediatric oncology ward there is the best in the world, where they're trying to help future generations live. And to demonize a guy who you know, was part of a group of scientists that threw you a life raft. You know, the way I did an analogy the other day, it'd be like if you just got off the Titanic in a lifeboat and one of the rescued passengers was sawing a hole in the hull of the boat. You know what I mean? That's what these guys are doing. A poll came out yesterday, said 30% of Republicans are never going to get vaxxed. Well, to me, that means there's landmines laid all throughout American life, because I don't know when I'm going to run into one of those guys. I don't know when the load-in guy who meets me at the loading dock, do you know what I mean? It makes it all like, is that one of those guys who lied about his status, you know?
Well, and they can all go on the internet and buy fake cards.
Right.
And stuff. So even if they go, well, I'm vaxxed, I've got all my stuff. I mean, they've been finding like these NFL players that have been getting fake things, and then they get COVID and they're infecting the team. And they're saying, well, yeah, you know, I early on in this, I posted when some people were saying, you know, I can't get vaxxed, I don't trust what's in it. And I was going, I knew you when you were doing heroin, when you were an alcoholic, when you were doing, you know, just eating at McDonald's every day. And now you're worried about what you put in your system. Give me a fucking break.
Dude, that's awesome. Exactly. No, I got a joke in my set about that. It's like, you know, you're eating a McRib sandwich and you're worried about what you're putting in your body. You know, you got a freezer full of Hot Pockets. Like, you know, you're getting tattooed. Like there's all kinds of, you know, just the list goes on, right? You're putting Roundup out on your lawn, you know, like Americans poison themselves by choice all throughout the day, you know, and it's insane. You know, it's weaponized ignorance. There's no other way to deal with it. And the only way to combat it, you know, is I don't even know how. You know, I share your frustrations, and I can't imagine what a health worker feels like. You're going into your third winter now of working shifts where you're watching people die slow, painful deaths, suffocating, essentially, you know, holding up an iPad so they can say goodbye to their family. That should have happened like the least amount of times it had to, you know, and if we had done the right thing, we would have been out of that situation a year ago.
It was our misfortune to have this happen during the worst administration in this country's history. Period. I mean,
right.
Everything, and yet guys like him and his family, they go get vaxxed, but they don't do it on camera. They do it, you know, they still talk anti-vax while they're covered. It's all about them. They don't give a shit. And that's what's really, people who follow them believe that, you know, that's, you know, like they don't want to be around these elitist, you know, left-wing elitist people. Who's more elitist than this motherfucker? Right. I mean, just if you think he's your man, go to Mar-a-Lago,
right?
Go to say, I'd love to play a round of golf and give me a room. And how quickly security would come out and have your ass in the street.
Yeah, exactly. He grew up, you know, he lives on Fifth Avenue, you know, or did. And he's got, you know, he was a millionaire when he was 11 months old because his dad would hide all his money in trust funds in his kid's name so he didn't have to pay taxes, you know. So by the time Trump was 3, he was a multimillionaire. You know, when I worked for him, I didn't work for him, I worked for NBC, but we, you know, we did the show. He'd walk through those casinos, you know, in the 90s, I did beauty pageants, and he would have security walk next to him when he walked the floor of like the Taj Mahal. So the rubes wouldn't come up and touch him,
Yeah.
and say hi to him, because they'd be like, oh, Donald Trump. And he hated it. He wasn't hanging out in Alabama, and Ohio. He was taking their social security checks into his, casino slot machines and sending them home on a bus without a free lunch,
Yeah. Or taking their daughters to a beauty pageant and having his way.
Dude. Well, and that's the real thing. When I spoke out, and I'm one guy, but I know directors who know stuff where like he would have to get like escorted out of a situation because he had been a predator, and he hires ex-NYPD cops, and, his name is on the thing and nobody wants to make trouble. So they basically cover it up, which we know in our business or in the entertainment business wasn't just Trump. Powerful men were getting away with shit they had no business getting away with. That's honestly what I want to see him go to jail for. A friend of mine met him when she was 10 because she skated at his rink in Central Park. By 12, he had taken a liking to her, and she called him his dirty uncle. She sort of got into drugs and alcohol and ended up in Epstein's place. She was basically like one of those women. And she said, Noel, you won't believe what those guys did to women in that place. And I basically like, I know I wouldn't. Please don't even tell me. I'm sorry you had to live through that. But like, that enrages me. E. Jean Carroll, who I happen to know, she was a famous writer at the time that he assaulted her in Bergdorf Goodman, right? And I tell people that story because that shows you who he was. He attacked a famous woman that he knew, in a dressing room department store, and not like a Sears in the middle of nowhere, in Bergdorf Goodman on Fifth Avenue, and walked back to his office afterwards because he knew he would get away with it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is he feels he's Teflon. Right. He will not be held accountable for anything that ever happens, because he can buy his way out of it and make their lives so miserable. And he's such a vile, disgusting piece of excrement.
Yeah.
But it's like I always look at this like, one of the times I got thrown off of Facebook for 30 days, all I did was pose a question. I said, what could have happened in Mitch McConnell's life to make him such a vile and hateful creature? And they came on immediately and said, I'm promoting hate on my channel. And all I did was pose a question that I think is valid, because he is a vile and hateful creature, but they've so owned all that media. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg would be in bed with Trump before he'd be in bed with Linus Pauling.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that's actually how Trump got the election, was Facebook. Jared was at Harvard at the same time as Zuckerberg. And Jared called up his friends in, Palo Alto and said, how do I micro-target people? How do I find the guys in Michigan that had voted for Obama, but also have like, a gun and a Kid Rock CD? How do I get these that once might have, belonged to a union, but now we're sort of like buying Bitcoin or whatever, they found these specific, demographics within America that they needed to turn in these 3 states. And then Jared fed that to the Russians. And then the Russians micro-targeted these people on Facebook with Hillary, with all these things you mentioned. And then people discover it thinking they're discovering it on their own. And then they tell a buddy, and then that guy tells somebody else, and it spreads, like a cancer. And that's how he won. That's cheating in and of itself. And we all know he coordinated with them and stuff, but and somebody like you speaking the truth on Facebook and getting kicked off just shows you, how corrupt the thing is,
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the hard part for me would be is if I ever met somebody, like if I ever met Zuckerberg in person, it would be all I could do not to just cold cock him.
Yeah.
Except, I know he would be surrounded with his posse and you would never get close to him. But nothing, I think, would bring me more joy than just to be able to, plant one on this piece of shit worm.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's changed the country forever. That's, we don't get to go back. That's the other thing. You said they have to hold these people accountable. You have to do it quickly. What I warn people about is look at the damage that a Marjorie Taylor Greene and a Lauren Boebert and a Matt Gaetz are doing. Imagine 20 or 30 of them in Congress, which is what you could have in the midterms, a year from now. So we really have to hold them accountable. Hopefully something will break. As you know, this week we have these emails and stuff. I mean, hopefully some of that'll light a fire under Garland or something,
So I find it just horrifying. I mean, I understand that the political process, there are steps to do it right, where you have to, it has to run a course. You have to make sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted properly. Otherwise, there's room for contention and all that. But the idea that while they're waiting to get this all in order, these people are just out there poisoning the well every day and getting more and more people on their side, especially as the pandemic goes on. You feel the frustration of people that I don't want to wear a mask here. You know, you're getting in my personal space here with this and all this, and they're digging their heels in so much deeper. And until you could purge these toxic, you know, these festering boils out of government, we're dead in the water. You know, I mean, and it's coming in increments that if your eyes are open, you can see it.
Right.
If you don't want to see it, you're not going to see it. And that's the problem with to me with this is we're sitting in a time that is so pivotal for our future. And it's, you know, it just frustrates me to death. And people that I know that I thought I've known for 40 years are spewing some of this. And I'm going, where's the pod? You know, it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. All of a sudden, I'm talking to a thing that looks like somebody I knew, but it sure doesn't seem like them.
Yeah, I know. It's really disheartening, you know, and it's really, I don't think anyone's lived through anything like this, you know, in a nation before, where you're in this sort of like a personality divide. I mean, there's entire families where, like, you know, they have to go home and see their pro-Trump dad or something and sit around the Christmas. You know, it's, I don't know. My point is, I don't know what the psychological long-term effects are from something like that. I think, you know, we'll be like almost two countries in a way.
Yeah.
There'll be places like, for me as a comedian, there's states I can't go to. Nobody's going to, you know, it's not safe for me to do a stand-up show in Texas or Florida or something, not just because of the pandemic, but because I speak out about Trump and guys threaten me too and stuff. And it's just, you know, it's disheartening. And like you said, every day that goes by that they don't hold him accountable, he's making money and he's building an army. And the other thing you touched on, which was so key, is that people are weary, right? It takes discipline. I said at the beginning of this pandemic, you need a leader who's like, look, this is going to be really hard. This may be the hardest thing that you'll ever be asked of as a citizen, but we're going to get through this together. You know, we're a strong nation. You know, we don't, you know, you stay home. We'll make sure you get money. We'll make sure you get food. Just stay home. Just lock the whole thing down and keep it that way as long as it has to be. You know, in World War II, 20-year-old women had to go work in shipyards, welding and stuff. You know, they were going from Wisconsin to Portland, never left home before. And now they're working 12-hour shifts for the war effort. We can do these kind of things and make sacrifices if you have a leader. Right. Right. And that was, again, when in 16, I said, like, this is the last guy you want in charge if something bad happens, because the guy I know would blow up the whole world just to save his ego. Yeah, you know, he really is a sociopath. He has no real thought of other people, you know. And the scariest thing to me is that these same people that have been weaponized now for pandemic stuff, we're going to have to call on them to treat climate change seriously in the next couple of years. We have to call on them now, but we almost don't even have the will to do two things at once. But these are the same people that we're going to have to say, hey, you know what? You have to start conserving energy. You have to start doing whatever you can in your life to battle this and turn this around. That's what's terrifying to me, is that the same oil companies and Koch brothers and all these guys that are benefiting, you know, Rupert Murdoch and all the anti-vax stuff, I feel like it's a dry run for when they tell people like, hey, don't listen to those lefties. You burn as much gas as you want. Coal energy is good. You know, like, that's what really scares me, is like, this same population that's been so corrupted is going to have to come together for the survival of the planet almost, you know?
Yeah, and I'm, you know, and I always tell people, like, I'm an optimistic pessimist about things. And, you know, I really feel kind of like being on one of those planes where you've reached the point of no return on takeoff.
Right.
And you have to fly no matter what's going on. You can't stop the plane yet. And when I see all this going on, I just kind of go, really, what happens will be the end of humanity. You know, we're just a speck on the life this planet historically. I mean, what, a couple of 100,000 years we've really been around here. That's nothing. That's an instant in this planet's history. And, you know, I mean, who knows what would have happened if that asteroid had never hit this planet and the dinosaurs were gone. We certainly wouldn't be here in like we are. And there's times where I go, is that a bad thing?
Right.
You know, just to finally, you know, purge the planet of this cancer that human beings have become. I mean, we're one of the few creatures on this planet that can't cohabit with the planet. We have to, you know, especially since the advent of the Industrial Revolution. Before that, when we were an agrarian society, we had to work more with the seasons and the land and all that. Man, as soon as, man, they could make machines and stuff and start kind of terrascaping the planet to suit our needs at the expense of every other creature on this planet, things will survive. I mean, this orb will go on, and maybe something spectacular will evolve out of it. But we are hell bent on destroying the place for our use. And you know, when you hear about, you know, we don't want wind farms. You know, it's so ugly, you know, to see those windmills out there, you know, but not be able to see anything because the smog is so bad from air pollution. Right. I mean, the arguments are such, the arguments have all the substance of like a skim coat that even a mosquito couldn't have surface tension on. It's so ridiculous. And then it becomes aggravating because so much of it, in at least my mind, is so obvious. And yet you're sitting there. There was a great thing the other day where they were talking about Greta and her followers and stuff, and talking about this generation, how they want to make change. And then they compared it to, I forget which one of the Kardashians it was. And like, you know, like where Greta has like 100,000 followers or something, and the other one's got like 20 million on there. And all they want to see is her closet with her 1,000 pairs of shoes. And, you know, you go, I don't put faith in that generation. I think there's elements of each generation that are thinking and caring people. And then there's a ton of these golems that just sort of exist that have basically enough, I think, brain power for basic life support. Yeah. That's what they use, you know, that they're breathing and they're moving and breeding. And beyond that, there's really not much salvation in them.
Well said. I mean, listeners to my podcast are going to love hearing you, and they're going to be so thankful you were on here today, Lee, because those are the themes. You know, I talk about that, like combustion engines, you know, cars are cool, but they're like 110 years old, right? You know, agrarian society is a few hundred years, right? People were living in harmony, especially in this country. Indigenous people knew how to live with the seasons. They knew how to rotate the crops. Yesterday, you had Dust Bowl level windstorms in Missouri, you know, because the soil's been all messed with again, you know, and you need Monsanto genetic engineering to grow a crop now. And it just, the list goes on. And what I always point out to people, like, what's wrong with nature? You know, everyone's obsessed with technology and some stupid thing you can buy on Amazon. And like you go, I live on basically a nature preserve. You know, I have a pond and a wetland and a river, and I'm fortunate. I'm about an hour outside of the city, but it's all horse farms and stuff. And I'll just go sit by the pond and I'll look at a dragonfly or something. And I'll be like, this is the most amazing thing in the world, right? If somebody just invented this, like if a billionaire was like, hey, look what I came up with, a squirrel, you know, people would be like, wow, you made that? That's incredible. It moves, you know, like life is already full of miracles. You know, we already have what we need. The wisdom is in the earth, and it's in the people that stay connected to the earth. And you're one of those people, you know, you're spreading light and wisdom. And that's what music does, right?
Yeah, I agree. You know? Absolutely.
Well,
it's just pivotal times we're in right now. This is really a make it or break it time.
And, you know, you've prepared us well for that, Leland. I want you to know, and I say this with all sincerity, you know, that's what it feels like for me. For somebody who admired, you know, musicians and people that were always sort of progressive. You know, I spent a lot of time with Graham Nash and stuff, like obviously Jackson. these guys cared. It wasn't just having a rock thing and that, like, that's all there, have a good time, but raise the frequencies. Bette Midler, like, that's somebody who does, she started a mulch pile in Central Park that's near our house in New York City. That's somebody who's always the great artist. The point I'm trying to make, always have an eye on the big picture, and
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah, it was great when she was taking like these lots in New York, these vacant lots, and making parks out of them for like the neighborhoods and stuff. Yeah, it's not hard.
Right.
That's the thing, is it's not hard, but the city or the people around it make it hard.
Right.
And Jesus, explain to me the negative of taking all this garbage out of this area and putting in some green space and letting people come here and just breathe a little fresh air and relax.
Yeah.
Yet there are people that are going to fight this like crazy. I just don't understand that mentality. And I don't understand the mentality of people like the Koch brothers and all of these people that you go, so you're going to amass fortunes beyond comprehension. But what good is that if there's nothing to spend it on? And at the end of the day, the quality of the planet is being diminished to a point where what are they going to have, like these little, glass domes where they've got their little world in it and fuck everything outside of that. And it'll be, and you would say it's by invitation only, but who wants to be around these scumbags?
Right.
The kind of people they are and the people that surround them are it's like when you would see these science fiction movies and there's going to be a catastrophe on Earth and they're building a giant spaceship to take all these people to another planet, and then they start talking about who's going to be on it, and we got to get our politicians on it. And you fuck, right. Those are the last people who should be on this. You get your scientists, you get your teachers, right. You get your people who own gardening centers and things. Politicians, man, leave them all behind. I trust them as far as I can bench press my house.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. No matter
how well intentioned they are when they go into it, there's always going to be carrots dangling in front of them that are going to make them, if not change their mind, it's going to slow them down to where they become slightly impotent.
Yeah, they all do, because money corrupts. It's the big money, and they realize, well, I got to do this for the greater good. The evil I've seen that these guys do, it's the subtle compromises. They think, well, I'll give them this because I want to get that, and that doesn't work anymore, because it's a life and death struggle now with the choices you make, especially in energy and stuff.
You only wish when you sit and watch the movie Dave that could actually be how it could work.
Yeah.
Just come in and go, well, no, we could have a child center. We just let's go over the budget and get rid of all this. We don't need the aircraft that the Air Force says, I don't want it, but you're still going to spend $1 trillion on it. That $1 trillion could really go to some greater good. But no, when it comes down to societal things, every penny counts. But when it comes to squandering money, boy, they print it, just crank it out. It's spewing out. It's just, I don't know. I will go down fighting. I will never bury my head in the sand and pretend this stuff doesn't exist. And, but it's just so aggravating to me, like we've said, where it's so obvious what's going on, yet people don't want to see it. They got blinders.
Exactly. Well said. But, truth raising the vibration, storytellers, people doing it in music and comedies. That's why there's so much value in what you're sharing every day. Because, people are tuning in to hear the cool stories about being in the studio, and they're also getting your wisdom, and saying, I do need to think about that. It's not just shut up and play music. When people would say that to artists, I'm like, what do you think an artist is? Why do you think he's writing songs anyway? You want him to not talk about what he's feeling?
Yeah. Why are you even here on this page?
Right.
You come on here only to cast negatives. I mean, there's plenty of other pages that think like you. So go over there. Don't come over here, because it's pretty obvious if you read all the comments that you are 1/10 of 1% at most of the people on here. So everybody's going to think you're a dick when you write something like that. It's not like they're going to go, oh, yeah, why don't you just shut up and play, kind of thing. It's unbelievable.
Exactly. No. Well said. Well, it's been an hour. I don't want to keep you too long, Leland. I know that you got things to do. There we go. So this was your Christmas present. Santa Sklar came to town.
Yeah, there ain't no Santa Claus.
Exactly. That's awesome, man. You are just, you're a legend. I know I'm not saying that like, yeah, I can't really put into words the impact you've had on my life and what a gift the music has been that you've brought us all. And just the sheer, the amount of love in yourself that you've put into all these artists, and all these songs. And if any of my listeners aren't familiar with your body of work, go check it out and check out the Outlier stuff. Listen to, Dolly Parton and Clint Black and all these other tracks, because you'll hear it. I mean, I shouldn't have brought this, even Gloria, when I watched that January 6th, the first thing I thought was, oh God, Lee's on that track,
Yeah.
What I mean?
I like looking behind you and seeing a violin bass sitting there.
Oh yeah. That's my Teisco too. Lindley taught me, about Teisco stuff. So that's the Matsumoto factory, late 60s with a rosewood laminate and stuff. Beautiful bass. Yeah. I mean, the pickups are just insane. I haven't touched it. The electronics are a little wonky, but it gets this beautiful tone.
They're wonky on a Hofner too. So
right. That's what I figured. Exactly. And well, next time, hopefully we can talk in, because I have a house full of guitars that I collected on the road and amps. I'm a picker. I collect art and Americana and signs and just, I got a barn full of stuff. A great lesson I had was Bill Wyman was backstage at a CSN show in London and the Hammersmith or something. And he comes up to me and he's like, can I have that set list off the ground? And he picked it up and he said, I keep everything, And I was like, I'm not alone, because I do that. I keep souvenirs.
I actually have started liquidating at this point because I got so much stuff. I've been selling a lot of kitsch and different things I've got, just because I'm just going, getting to that age where you're going, man, I don't want somebody stuck with all this stuff if something happens to me and having to suss this out. So, I mean, I've unloaded so much stuff and I haven't even really noticed it's gone because there's so much crap, but valuable things.
Yeah, I know, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm wearing the same thing. I mean, I got pre-Columbian art and you start to think of, especially like I have a barn, and barns can like, you're like.
It's a magnet for stuff.
Exactly.
Got the space, you'll fill it.
Exactly. And I got film projectors and art. And, in this part of the country, as you know, there's so many estate sales all the time. And there's other people that have this stuff and it's just irresistible. But, you keep it going, you pass it on. And I think that's a great metaphor for what you're doing in life, especially these YouTube things. You're passing on these treasures.
Yeah. I always felt, rather than being a homeowner, I'm a curator.
Yeah. But wonderful. Exactly. And in art too, right? You're curating that spirit. And a lot of these guys, sadly, that you got to work with aren't with us anymore. We just lost David Lasley last week. Somebody who sang like, I didn't know people could sing that good.
Yeah.
Like I knew the background Luther Vandross stuff, but I listened to that track you posted of his sing. And it's just like, stunning, stunning artistry.
Just lost Phil Chen yesterday.
Right. Yeah.
It's like they're going quick. But I sit there and I just get so pissed off because okay, so David Lasley died, but Mitch McConnell's still here.
Right. No, exactly. Right.
This picture.
I worked with John Prine a lot, and as we know, we lost him early. And I was like, how does this happen? How does Trump come out of this thing and John Prine doesn't, And I love it, like that you share this stuff. I'll let you go here, but whenever I'd had these opportunities, like I worked with the Stones backstage and whoever, I would always go into catering and I would try to sit with like a truck driver or somebody who's been around for a while on the tour. And I'd be like, tell me what happened, tell me about that Small Faces tour you were on, in 1974. And they love to open up about these stories. And it was always in my mind, like, I might be the one directing this story. Do you know what I'm saying? Like somebody else might not ask this crew guy who's got a lifetime of experience, and your generation, invented touring, as you well know, like they were learning on the fly. Buddha will tell me about trying to Mike Jackson's piano, Jimmy rig it and all this, you know what I'm saying?
When we started, Shoko was in Jack Kelmy's garage. And, they only had two acts. They had James Taylor and Zeppelin.
That's crazy. Exactly.
Watching them developing gear. I was sitting with Jim Bornhorst one night at dinner and he's got a napkin and he was sketching out an idea and he sat there and invented Very Lights.
Right.
You know, there's like, but and especially when you're around the crew,
Right.
because they experience and see everything. The band comes in, does it, goes. The crew is really the integral, you know, thing that holds all of this together, and they really can have the amazing stories of all the things that went on, you know, behind the scenes and stuff, and not sordid, but just the amazing machinery that puts all this on the road is something else. And
Absolutely fascinating. Rance Caldwell. Rance would be somebody that I'd just be like, Rance, show crow, tell me about it. You know, tell me about mixing, you know.
Yeah, Rance and Doc.
Yeah.
They were a great team together, you know,
That's
and,
awesome.
and seeing people like Jan Alejandro was one of our crew guys, who then went on to form Jan Al Case Company, which is one of the biggest case companies in the business. I mean, it's the journeys everybody travels are really interesting. And sometimes the artists are on a certain level, the least interesting of the whole.
Very well said. I found that early on, you know, this whole, not that artists aren't interesting, but the whole world behind the scenes is like, you know, that's where the real, you know, because like you said, they're seeing it all day. When I was Stills' road manager forever, you know, he and I'd show up at 4 o'clock, you know, and the crew already had a full day. You know, we'd be in some castle in Germany, like, you won't believe it. We did a cross load from here and then this thing, you know, it's like, so
Yeah.
It's awesome. And it's awesome, the family of it all, you know, that you spend your lives, and I'll shut up now, but a lot of people don't understand, and I hear this coming across in your things. A lot of being a musician, being in a touring band is about the hang. It's not just the music, you know, it's about, can I get along with these guys? Can I learn to live with them that 18 hours a day we're not on stage? And that goes into the music. Because as you know, when that's not right, nothing's right, you know?
Yeah, and feel it.
Exactly. Well, on that note, I hope our audience felt good today, because my man was bringing you some cheer. This is Lee Sklar. Go check out his book, Everybody Loves Me. You will love this book. Get this book, endlessly fascinating, all these pictures. The Immediate Family has got a self-titled album that came out this fall, completely kick-ass. You can get that at immediatefamily.com, anywhere you download, Spotify, you name it. Great stuff. Catch them on tour. I caught the tour at Norwalk, the show, and it was just, you know, you have no idea, not just how great their material is, this new stuff, but how many songs they created that you might associate with another artist. And then you guys play and you're like, oh, that's your song, you know, and it was so great to hear all that Warren stuff, you know, the Zevon material. It's just like, talk about a loss. That's somebody I've missed during what we've gone through. I often like, man, I wish we had Warren Zevon right now.
Yeah. Boy, there would be a nice, brilliantly caustic
exactly
material coming out of Warren.
Yeah, Warren would have something to say for sure. So thank you so much. Thank you. So I'm gonna stop it now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out Lee Sklar. Once again, I can't thank you enough for being here, brother. You rock. All right, Jimmy, man, I just got to talk to Lee Sklar. Jimmy's our executive producer, folks, so he didn't disappear, in case you're wondering where he was this week, but I had to give all the focus to our, you know, illustrious bass playing genius, Leland Sklar, who came on and, you know, as you just heard, he talks like I do, Jimmy. I mean, he was talking about, you know, nature and how we've lost, you know, our connection with nature, how since the founding of agrarian society, we no longer like sort of live in harmony, you know. Industrious, like the Industrial Revolution gave rise to all these things that we're sort of suffering from now. You know, we had a dust storm in Missouri the other day, you know, cars, global warming, all this kind of stuff. Like I said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, like those things are a blip in the history of mankind, right? You know, but they're having an outsized effect on our life now. And you sort of have to listen to the storytellers and the musicians and the people that are sort of trying to raise your frequency to, you know, get the right perspective on things, because all these challenges are doable, right? We're in the holiday season now. You know, holiday is a time of promise and life and love. You know, that's what, you know, little baby Jesus and Santa Claus, you know, that's what all that stuff is about, right? Sharing good cheer. It's better to give than receive. And we need to think of that as people now. You know, do I need to receive another thing, or can I give back to this planet? You know, can I put this thing down and not consume this thing? Because it's not going to work anyway. I don't need 4,000 pairs of shoes, you know, but you do need to save the planet, you know. And I know that doesn't apply to concert t-shirts, because my man Jimmy has a problem, folks. Who you rocking today?
I am rocking Run DMC, you know, featuring Sit JBK this week. So, you know, I do have a problem. No, this is like my 12th shirt in 2 weeks. You know, I used to be a lot heavier, folks. So, you know, a lot of my wardrobe doesn't fit me anymore. So I got to get the stuff that fits. You know?
Yoga Jimmy is getting skinny. Got to get
trying to slim down, but all the baked goods I've been having lately, and even more stuff coming in with Christmas around the corner, you know.
Yeah,
so,
and you got all your women baking you pies, brother.
It's a rough life here in Indy. It's 51 degrees here in Indianapolis. Like, as an animal, I'm concerned in December that we're at 51 degrees here. It's
60,
unusual.
60s here in New York City. 60 degrees,
God.
you know, in December. And it's going to be like 9 degrees next week, right? I'm going to Boston. Well, I'll be in Boston. I'll be in Vermont when you guys hear this, folks. But yeah, it's cold. It's climate change. It's cold. It's hot. It's crazy. Imagine how the bugs feel, dude. You know, like, is it spring? What the hell? That was a quick hibernation. Is it time to get up already? You know?
Yeah. Looking around.
Exactly. Run DMC, man. I love, you know, I'm old school with that. Right. That was the beginning of hip hop for me. You know, I remember when the King of Rock and all that stuff came out, and it was awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome when it cross-pollinated too with Aerosmith and stuff, because it brought it kind of up into the suburbs, you know. And I was, you know, an hour outside of New York City when that stuff dropped. And it's funny, Reverend Run is an incredible person and a great performer. And I just did a benefit a few years ago with him. And when he got up and like did all those old songs, you know, it was like a room full of like rich old white people, because it was one of these charity $10,000 a seat kind of things. And people were just going off, you know. There's joy in that music. You know, the old school kind of hip hop had a lot of joy in it. I don't know what it is now, by the way. Like, every time I log on to TikTok, it's just some white teenage girl trying to twerk, you know, to trap music or trap rap or whatever everything sounds the same. Every other word is booty, you know?
Yeah, that pretty much summarizes it, man. I mean, I've kind of gotten on to the Prince train of like real music by real musicians. You know, I try to find those tapes as best I can. Not that, you know, processed stuff doesn't sound good, because I'll listen to Drake or Jay-Z or something, but yeah, they just push this stuff out now. I mean, it's really, I don't know, very produced now. A lot of music.
Exactly. And Lee was, you know, part of the greatest generation of studio musicians. He started out in what was known as the Section, which sort of took over for the Wrecking Crew, which was a group of LA session guys that played on all these records at Capitol Records and all the stuff you've heard. Beach Boys, right? When you hear Good Vibrations, that's all Wrecking Crew, you know, all those incredible singles that came out in the 60s. And then the early 70s, Lee and these guys, James Taylor, you know, Fire and Rain, all that kind of stuff, Jackson Brown, you know, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Toto, you know, Lee played with Toto forever, and Jeff Porcaro, rest his soul. So, you know, what we talked about in the show, as people just heard, is that a lot of that was like guys in the same room, looking each other in the eye, vibing off each other, you know, and that's a bit of what we lose in this overly produced stuff. Like, it's fun and kids like it, but there's not a room for kind of like that cohesive vibe thing. And everyone, you know, everything's got their place, but you know, and Prince used to record all the instruments himself half the time too, you know.
Yeah, if the guy could be in 5 different places playing all 5 at once, he could do that. But you know, limitations within this world. for Prince.
Exactly. So anyway, well, we'll do a whole episode on Prince. As you guys know, I had the pleasure of working on a few gigs with Prince, but and RIP Prince. But anyway, thanks for listening to this special episode. This is the Christmas episode. Lee Sklar. We talked about all the normal dystopian stuff that we do. But at the end of the conversation, you know, he talked about it. it may feel hopeless, you know, and for a guy like that, you know, he's seen it all. He started professionally in the late 60s. You know, he was working with progressive artists that spoke out against the Vietnam War and climate change early on, you know, which was the no nukes movement and stuff in the 70s, and Jackson Brown's Before a Deluge record, and James Taylor obviously has always been associated with environmental causes. Neil Young, you know, these, so all, to hear guys that were around for all this stuff say like, yeah, this is as bad as I've ever seen it, you know, which it obviously is, but somehow it's still just sobering to hear that. And, you know, the antithesis of that is sort of like raising people's vibrations. It's music, it's sharing, it's songs, it's stories. Facts don't change people's minds anymore because everybody has their own set of facts, and the internet and phones and stuff, where it's curated to put your own point of view back in your face in the convenience of the palm of your hand, right? But if you get in the room with other people, you can sort of get challenged, and you can raise your own vibration, and you can learn from others and work in concert with each other. And that's what that's what a great band does, right? A great band locks in, so it becomes this one thing that sort of breathes and undulates and moves. The Grateful Dead would do that at their best. On a good night, it would be like this one organism, you know, that would like improv into all these other things, you know, making the sum greater than its parts. And that's what we need now as a country, right? In World War II, we were able to become this great nation that helped save the world. We certainly didn't do it alone, as we're often kind of told, but you know, we did rise to the occasion like no other nation had. And that's because everybody pitched in, right? From 20-year-old women that moved to the coast to work in shipyards and learn how to weld, you know, to people rationing aluminum and tin and whatever you could back at home. When we work together, we can do something better than we can do on our own, right? People who surf these big waves, you see these guys that surf 100-foot wave in Nazaré and Portugal and stuff, they need a team, right? You need dudes with jet skis ready to drop you in and pull you out when it breaks and all this other stuff. And we're on a big wave now, right? We're on a big wave that's been sort of breaking and coming in toward the coastline for 2.5 years, right? And a lot of people are like, I don't need to get vaxxed. I don't need to stop it. You're not going to, you know, you're not going to beat nature, right? So we have to learn how to work in harmony with her and work as a team to ride on the wave instead of letting it hit us in the face. So that's my thought for the holiday. You guys can check out this new episode and the next episodes at noelcasler.com. I'll be back with you next week. Jimmy's got his stuff. Jimmy, tell him about your stuff.
Yeah, you can check out my material at jbkonair.com. Also subscribe to my Substack. It's all there at my Twitter and Instagram at jbkonair. It'll be right there for you.
All right. Well, and thanks, Jimmy. It's another, you know, well, we haven't been doing this a year, but it's the end of the year. So thanks for all your help this year and cutting all those kick-ass clips. And
of course, man.
Appreciate you, buddy. And we'll see you soon, folks. This is episode 43 of the Noel Casler podcast, Lee Sklar special edition. Peace.